My friends, there is no greater privilege in life than to walk in the presence of the Almighty, to be a vessel of His power, a beacon of His light, and a testimony of His grace. The question today is, how do you know if you carry the presence of God? Are there signs that confirm His dwelling within you? The answer is a resounding yes. The evidence of God's presence in a believer's life is unmistakable. When a person truly walks with God, their life reflects His power, His love, and His character. This is not a matter of mere words or religious appearances. It is a transformation that takes place deep within and manifests outwardly. The presence of God is not something that can be hidden or fabricated. It is a living reality that changes the way a person thinks, speaks, and acts. One of the first signs of carrying God's presence is an overwhelming sense of peace. This is not just any peace, but a supernatural peace that surpasses all understanding. It is a peace that remains even in the face of trials, difficulties, and uncertainties. A person who walks with God does not panic when troubles arise because they know in whom they trust. Their faith is not built on circumstances, but on the unshakable foundation of God's promises. Even when everything around them seems to be falling apart, they remain calm, knowing that God is in control. Another undeniable sign of God's presence is the presence of genuine love. This love is not based on emotions or personal gain. It is the love of God flowing through a person's heart. It is a love that forgives easily, that serves without expecting anything in return, and that reaches out to the lost and broken. Those who carry God's presence do not hold grudges or seek revenge. Instead, they extend grace, even to those who have wronged them. The love of God within them compels them to show kindness, to help those in need, and to be a source of comfort to those who are hurting. This kind of love is not humanly possible. It is the evidence of God working in and through a person's life. A believer who carries God's presence also exhibits an unshakable faith. They do not waver when faced with difficulties. They trust in God's power rather than their own abilities. When trials come, they do not complain or despair. Instead, they stand firm, declaring that God is greater than any challenge they face. Their faith is not dependent on what they see, but on the promises of God. Even in the darkest moments, they believe that God is working all things together for good. This unwavering faith is a testimony to those around them, inspiring others to trust in God as well. Another powerful sign of God's presence is the manifestation of divine power. When God's presence is upon someone, His authority is evident in their life. Their prayers carry power. Their words bring encouragement and healing, and their actions lead others to God. Miracles and breakthroughs follow those who walk closely with Him. This does not mean that they seek fame or recognition, but rather that their lives are a demonstration of God's glory. When they speak, people are moved, not by persuasive words, but by the power of the Holy Spirit working through them. A deep hunger for God is also a key indicator of His presence. Those who carry His presence are not satisfied with a casual relationship with Him. They long to know Him more. They spend time in prayer, not out of obligation, but out of desire. They meditate on His word, not just to gain knowledge, but to draw closer to Him. Their greatest joy comes from being in His presence. They do not chase after worldly pleasures or temporary successes because their hearts are set on things above. Finally, a person who carries God's presence naturally influences others. People are drawn to them not because of their charisma or talents, but because they reflect the light of Christ. Their life is a testimony without them even trying to make it one. Their words bring life, their presence brings peace, and their actions point people to God. They do not need to announce that they carry God's presence. It is evident in everything they do. The presence of God is not something that can be faked or imitated. It is a reality that transforms a person from the inside out. Those who truly carry His presence will exhibit peace, love, faith, power, hunger for God, and a life that draws others to Christ. These are the signs that confirm his dwelling within a believer, and they are the marks of a life surrendered fully to him. The evidence of God's presence in a believer's life is unmistakable. When a person carries his presence, it is reflected in their thoughts, actions, and character. This is not something that can be hidden or artificially created. It is a genuine transformation that takes place when God dwells within someone. His presence brings a shift in how a person views the world, interacts with others, and faces challenges. It is not about religious appearances or words, but a deep, undeniable reality that manifests in every aspect of life. One of the most powerful signs of carrying God's presence is an inner peace that is not dependent on circumstances. This peace is not the kind that the world offers, which comes and goes based on external situations. Instead, it is a supernatural calm that remains steady even in the face of trials, disappointments, and uncertainties. A person who carries God's presence does not live in fear or anxiety because they know that their life is in his hands. They may go through hardships, but their heart remains anchored in trust. Their confidence is not in their ability to control situations, but in God's faithfulness to carry them through. Love is another clear indication of God's presence. When God truly dwells in someone, his love flows through them naturally. This love is not selective or conditional. It reaches even those who are difficult to love. It leads to forgiveness rather than bitterness, kindness rather than retaliation, and compassion rather than indifference. A person who carries God's presence is known for their grace toward others. They do not hold onto offenses or seek revenge because they understand the mercy that God has shown them. Their love is selfless, seeking to serve. Faith that does not waver is also a sign of God's presence. Those who walk with him do not crumble when faced with trials. They trust that God is working all things together for their good, even when they do not understand his plan. Their faith is not shaken by difficult circumstances because they have experienced God's power firsthand. Instead of being consumed by doubt, they stand firm in the promises of God, believing that he is always in control. Their unwavering trust becomes a testimony to others, inspiring those around them to rely on God's strength rather than their own. A deep hunger for God is another characteristic of those who carry his presence. They are not content with surface-level faith or routine religious practices. They long to spend time with him in prayer and to know him more through his word. They seek his guidance in everything they do and are drawn to worship not out of obligation, but out of love. Their greatest desire is not material success or worldly recognition, but a closer relationship with God. Finally, the presence of God in a person's life naturally impacts those around them. Others see something different in them, an unshakable peace, a selfless love, a steadfast faith. Their life becomes a reflection of God's character, drawing people toward him. They do not need to proclaim that they carry God's presence. It is evident in the way they live, speak, and treat others. The presence of God in a believer's life is not just a theological concept. It is a living reality that transforms everything. It brings peace that cannot be shaken, love that reaches beyond human limitations, faith that stands firm in trials, power that moves mountains, and a hunger for more of him. Those who carry his presence do not need to announce it. Their lives testify of his glory. But the question remains, do you carry his presence? Is his peace evident in your heart? Does his love flow through you? Are you walking in faith, trusting him, even when the road is unclear? Is there a hunger in you to know him more? Do people see Christ in you? God's presence is not for a select few. It is available to all who seek him with a sincere heart. If you long to walk in his power, then surrender to Him fully. Seek Him in prayer, dwell in His word, and live in obedience to His will. When you do, His presence will go before you, His light will shine through you, and your life will never be the same. The world needs men and women who carry God's presence, people whose lives reflect His love, power, and truth. Will you be one of them? The invitation is open. God is calling. Will you answer?